What are the creatures in Washington Irving's Rip Van Winkle? Are they gnomes, ghosts, mountain spirits, or a fusion of all three? Let's explore this complex question in today's episode. In the 1819 short story, after the loafer Rip Van Winkle wanders into the Catskill Mountains in New York State to escape his wife and go squirrel hunting, he meets a short, square-built old fellow with thick, bushy hair and a grizzled beard, wearing antique Dutch clothes and carrying a keg of liquor. This happens naturally at twilight, when the boundaries between worlds grow porous. Rip helps this mysterious figure carry the keg up the mountain and stumbles upon a company of odd-looking personages, dressed in a quaint, outlandish fashion, amusing themselves at ninepins, though none of the participants seem particularly happy. Their smallness is not emphasized except in the first instance, the short, square-built old fellow, which is curious given the dwarfish imagery that is developed around these creatures. The narrator explains that their visages, too, were peculiar. One had a large beard, broad face, and small, piggish eyes. The face of another seemed to consist entirely of nose, and was surmounted by a white sugarloaf hat, set off with a little red cock's tail. They all had beards of various shapes and colors. The creatures are comically quaint, distinctly Dutch, and a whimsical blend of human and animal, pig and bird. Rip, an interloper in some mysterious ritual that's beyond his comprehension, waits on this company, filling their flagons with liquor, and then drinks the beverage himself, which submerges him in a 20-year sleep. When he wakes up an old man, no one in the town recognizes him or believes his story until old Peter Vanderdonk informs the skeptical crowd that the Catskill Mountains had always been haunted by strange beings, and that the old man's father had once seen Hendrik Hudson, the first discoverer of the river and country, along with his crew, playing at ninepins. They kept a kind of vigil there every 20 years, and the old-timer himself had heard, one summer afternoon, the sound of their balls like distant peals of thunder. Thus the proffered explanation of the entities is that they are both the ghosts of the colonial past and local weather gods. Their ghostliness has links to tragedy and trauma. After all, mutineers cast Henry Hudson, his son, and 6 crew members adrift in Hudson Bay in 1611, never to be seen again. It comes to light in Washington Irving's 1848 postscript to Rip Van Winkle that there is an even older source for the region's supernatural character. The narrator, Mr. Knickerbocker, explains that the Catskills, along with being inhabited by an old squaw spirit who controlled the weather and had charge of the doors of day and night, contained another kind of mountain spirit. In the old times, say the Indian traditions, there was a kind of Manitou or spirit who kept about the wildest recesses of the Catskill Mountains and took a mischievous pleasure in wreaking all kinds of evils and vexations upon the red men. Sometimes he would assume the form of a bear, a panther, or a deer, lead the bewildered hunter a weary chase through tangled forest and among ragged rocks, and then spring off with a loud ho-ho, leaving him aghast on the brink of a beetling precipice or raging torrent. This spirit lives on an enchanted mountain in a forbidden place and punishes those who steal his magical gourds. While this story adds a layer of Native American myth, the spirit nevertheless recalls the gnome king Rubizal, the trickster gnome giant of the Silesian mountains, who transforms into wild creatures, carefully guards his magic herbs, and leads poor wanderers to the edges of cliffs. While writing the legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving borrowed a range of elements from a Rubizal legend in an 18th century collection of German folktales. It stands to reason that, when reinterpreting Rip Van Winkle later in life, he introduces a shadowy reference to this mischievous European mountain spirit. The company of bearded and behatted fellows could very well be minions of the gnome king Rubizal, suddenly and strangely assimilated into the American landscape and national mythology. Irving stamps a supposedly Native American legend with European watermarks, just as he weaves German language materials like the fairy tale Peter Klaus into his vision of American identity.